She sat down at his table like she'd known him for years. A complete stranger, a frightened woman, a little girl clutching a worn fox, and whispered, "My ex is watching. Please pretend you know me." He could have said no. He took her hand instead. That was the night Grant Bennett looked across a restaurant and saw something he couldn't control. A man his daughter hadn't met yet, sitting beside a woman he'd spent years breaking down. He smiled that polished smile and walked away. He had no idea that little girl was already watching. And 1 year later, she called that stranger Daddy. If this story moves you, subscribe and drop the name of your city in the comments. I want to. I have a rule about Thursdays. Nobody touches my Thursday evenings. Not my coworkers, not my family, not my phone, not my conscience. Thursday nights belong to me, to my corner table at a restaurant called Callahan's on the east side of Denver, to a glass of sparkling water, and a steak sandwich that I have ordered so many times that Marco, the evening server, stopped asking me years ago. He just brings it. I sit down, I eat, I breathe. And I remember what it feels like to exist as a person rather than a function. That probably sounds depressing. It wasn't. Or maybe it was, and I'd simply been doing it long enough that I stopped noticing. I'm a civil engineer. I design bridges and drainage systems and public transit corridors. I spend my days calculating load, tolerances and stress thresholds, and how much weight a structure can carry before it breaks. By Thursday evening, I am tired of thinking about what things can bear. I just want a quiet table and a sandwich, and 30 seconds of not being responsible for anything. I was 34 years old. I lived alone in a one-bedroom apartment near downtown. I had lost my fiancée 4 years earlier, not to death, not to cruelty, just to the slow accumulation of two people realizing they were making each other into smaller versions of themselves. She moved to Portland. I stayed in Denver. I told everyone I was fine. After enough years, I almost believed it. My Thursday routine was not a coping mechanism, I told myself. It was a preference, a lifestyle, a deliberate choice made by a grown man who valued peace and predictability above the chaos that came with wanting things from other people. I was very, very good at lying to myself. That particular Thursday in November was cold enough that I'd worn my heaviest coat into Callahan's and draped it over the chair beside me, because it was too thick to hang on the little hook near the booth. The restaurant was maybe half full. Marco had already brought my water. I was about 7 minutes into reading a structural analysis report on my tablet when I heard the sound of a chair scraping across the floor opposite me. I looked up expecting Marco. It was not Marco. It was a woman I had never seen before in my life. Dark hair pulled back. Professional clothes but rumpled in a way that said her day had gone longer than planned. She was 30, maybe 31. Pretty in a tired sort of way that made you think she'd been prettier yesterday and would be prettier again tomorrow once whatever was happening right now stopped happening. She sat down across from me. She did not ask permission. She did not apologize. She set a handbag on the floor and leaned slightly forward and said very quietly with extraordinary control in her voice, "Please don't look behind me." I stared at her. My mouth opened. My mouth closed. A 6-year-old girl appeared at her elbow and grabbed the edge of the table and looked at me with the kind of focused, unblinking attention that only small children and large predators can sustain without discomfort. She was holding a stuffed fox. The fox had seen better decades. One eye was slightly lopsided. His fur was the color of old rust. I looked at the woman. I looked at the child. I looked at the woman again. "I'm sorry," I said. "I think you might have the wrong table." "I don't," she said. And then she glanced down at her daughter and said very gently, "Molly, honey, why don't you sit next to me and look at the kids' menu?" And Molly, this 6-year-old person, who had apparently inherited her mother's gift for focused observation, climbed into the booth beside the woman without taking her eyes off me and accepted a laminated menu and held it in front of her face without actually reading it because she was still watching me over the top of it. "My name is Claire," the woman said. Her voice was very steady, which told me she was working hard to keep it that way. "My ex-husband is sitting at a table behind you. I don't know if he saw me walk in. He's been telling people, mutual friends, his family people from our neighborhood, that I'm falling apart since the divorce, that I can't handle things, that I'm not stable." She stopped, swallowed. Tonight he has his girlfriend with him, and if he sees me eating alone, I will hear about it for 6 months. I know this sounds absolutely insane, but I need you to pretend for maybe 5 minutes that we know each other, that I'm here with someone. I'll pay for your dinner, whatever you're having. I'll cover it, and I'll leave you alone." There was a long silence. Marco appeared, saw the situation, and with the instincts of a man who has worked in hospitality for 20 years, silently added 2 more place settings and disappeared. I should have said no. I want to be clear about that. I absolutely should have said no. I was a private person. I valued my privacy. I did not enjoy deception or drama or the complicated emotional aftermath of other people's failed marriages. I had carefully, methodically constructed a life with a very low probability of unexpected developments, and a strange woman appearing at my table in a Denver restaurant on a Thursday night was by any reasonable measure an unexpected development. I said, "How long have we been dating?" Claire stared at me. For a moment she just looked at me like I'd answered her in a language she didn't immediately recognize. "What? If your ex-husband comes over?" I said, "It's more convincing if we have a consistent story. How long have we been together?" She blinked. Something crossed her face that wasn't quite a smile, but was in the neighborhood of one, the involuntary kind. The kind that happens when something genuinely surprises you, and your body reacts before your composure catches up. "6 months, she said. "Okay." I picked up my water glass. 6 months. I reached across the table and took her hand. That was the moment. I didn't understand it at the time. I was thinking tactically holding her hand looked more natural than sitting rigidly on opposite sides of a table pretending to have a conversation. It was practical. It was a structural decision, the kind I made every day at work. Maximum effect, minimum unnecessary action. But when my hand covered hers, Claire went very still. Not uncomfortable still. More like the particular stillness of someone who has been bracing for impact and just realized the thing they feared has passed by. Molly's eyes appeared over the top of the children's menu. She looked at our hands. She looked at my face. She looked at her mother's face. She went back to not reading the menu. About 4 minutes passed. The conversation I had with Claire during those 4 minutes was the most surreal of my adult life. We talked about the weather. I asked her if she wanted to share an appetizer. She said she wasn't very hungry. I said I understood. She said the restaurant was nice. I said I came here most Thursdays. She said that was a good habit. I agreed. We sounded. I thought exactly like 2 people on a 6th-month date who had run out of interesting things to say and were comfortable enough not to mind. And then I heard footsteps behind me. Expensive shoes. The particular rhythm of someone who walks like they expect the room to reorganize itself around their movement. A man appeared at the side of our table. Tall. Well-dressed in the way that requires a certain kind of effort to appear effortless. The kind of jacket that costs more than a car payment. Smooth face, practiced smile, eyes that were doing something completely different from what his mouth was doing. He said, "Claire, I thought that was you." His voice was warm, genuinely warm. That was the part that surprised me. I'd expected performance, and instead, I got something that sounded almost sincere. He was good. I recognized immediately that he was very good. "Grant," Claire said. Her hand tightened under mine just slightly. Grant looked at me. The smile stayed in place, but something behind his eyes sharpened. "I don't think we've met," he said. I stood up halfway the way you do when someone approaches a table. I extended my hand. "Nathan," I said. "Claire's told me a lot about you." It was a lie. Claire had told me his name and the fact that he was sitting somewhere behind me. That was the full extent of my intelligence on Grant Bennett. But I said it the way I said things at work when a city council member asked me about a project status and I needed to project confidence while buying time to confirm the actual numbers. Calm. Certain. The specific tone of a man who has nothing to hide because there is nothing to hide. Grant shook my hand. His grip was the practiced kind, firm, without being aggressive, calibrated for maximum competence signal. "Nathan," he said like he was filing the name. "What do you do, Nathan?" "Civil engineering, public infrastructure mostly, bridges, transit systems, that kind of work." "Interesting. He wasn't interested. He was assessing. His eyes moved to Molly, and his whole body language shifted. The smile softened. The shoulders dropped. The practiced warmth became something approaching genuine. "Hey, Bug, you eating dinner?" "We already ordered," Molly said without looking up from the children's menu. "Nathan was here first." There was a beat of silence. Grant's gaze slid back to me. I kept my expression pleasant and said nothing because people who are comfortable rarely feel the need to explain themselves. "Well," Grant said, looking back at Claire, "maybe we could all get together sometime. It'd be good to know the people in Molly's life." He said it pleasantly, the way you say something that isn't a request at all, but requires a yes to avoid an argument. Claire said, "Of course." And the word cost her something. I could feel it in the way she said it. Grant smiled at me one more time, the kind of smile that functions as a warning, and said it was good to meet me, and walked back toward his table. Claire did not exhale until his footsteps faded. Then she pulled her hand back and pressed both of hers flat against the tabletop like she needed to feel something solid. "Thank you," she said. "Seriously, I'll get the check and get out of your way." "You don't have to leave," I said. She looked up. "I mean, you already sat down. Marco's already added your place settings. He's going to be slightly offended if you order nothing. He takes it personally." I paused. "Stay. Get something to eat. Your daughter looks like she hasn't decided between the grilled cheese and the chicken tenders, and that is clearly a serious decision." Molly looked up at me with the lopsided-eyed stuffed fox pressed against her chest. "The chicken tenders," she said very seriously, "have barbecue sauce. I don't like barbecue sauce." "Then it sounds like the grilled cheese," I said. "I know," she said. Like this had been obvious all along and she was simply waiting for the rest of the world to catch up. Claire looked between us. Something shifted in her expression. Not warm exactly, not yet, but something careful and watchful that I didn't fully understand. "Okay," she said. "Thank you for all of it. Don't thank me yet. Marco's going to try to upsell you on the soup." She almost smiled again. "I'll be strong." "Nobody's ever been strong enough. Just order the soup. It's actually very good." Marco arrived, and Claire ordered the soup, and Molly ordered the grilled cheese, and I ordered my steak sandwich, which I had been waiting for since approximately 4:30 in the afternoon, and for a few minutes we were just 3 people at a table in a restaurant in Denver, which was such a specific kind of ordinary that I almost forgot how strange the previous 15 minutes had been. Then Claire said, "I'm sorry about the told me a lot about you thing." "I recovered," I said. "That was very smooth, actually. I do a lot of project status presentations." She laughed, a real one, quiet, surprised, aimed at the table rather than at me. Molly looked up from her children's coloring page. Marco had brought one with a box of 4 crayons and watched her mother laugh and seemed to decide this was acceptable and went back to coloring. "I'm an interior designer," Claire said. "Project manager mostly. Renovation projects, commercial spaces, some residential." A pause. Grant used to say it wasn't a real career, that I was a contractor with good taste. "Is that what he still tells people?" Her jaw tightened. "He tells people I'm struggling, that I took on too much after the divorce and I can't manage it." She stopped, pressed her lips together. "I have 3 active projects and 2 more in proposal stage. I manage my own business, my own finances, my own home. I raise my daughter." She said it quietly, but there was something iron underneath it. "I'm not struggling." "I know," I said. She looked at me. "You don't know me." "No, but I know what struggling looks like, and I know what someone who's fighting to hold something together looks like. They're not the same thing." She studied me for a moment. Then she picked up her soup spoon. "What did you say you designed?" she said. "Bridges," I said. "Mostly." "And you live in Denver. You've always been here." "Grew up in Fort Collins. Moved here for grad school, stayed for work. Never quite left." I drank my water. "You, born in Denver, grew up in Denver, married in Denver, divorced in Denver." She said it with a kind of flat precision that wasn't bitterness exactly, more like a woman reading from a fact sheet about someone else's life. "I'm a local." "Me too, officially anyway." What does that mean? It means I've been here 8 years and I still get lost on Colfax. She almost smiled for the third time, and this one reached her eyes. We talked for another 30 minutes, while Molly colored what appeared to be a purple horse and ate her grilled cheese in methodical halves, and occasionally contributed single-sentence observations to our conversation with the total confidence of someone who has never once questioned whether her opinion was welcome. At some point, the conversation shifted without my noticing. We stopped making careful conversation and just talked. Claire told me about a renovation project in Loudoun that had gone sideways when a client decided midway through to add a rooftop terrace to a building that structurally could not support one. I told her about a transit project I'd spent 18 months on that got defunded 2 weeks before implementation. She said that sounded infuriating. I said it was. She said that was the part nobody told you about design, that sometimes the thing you built doesn't get to exist. That the work still mattered, but the thing didn't survive. I looked at her when she said that, and understood she wasn't talking entirely about my transit project. Yeah, I said. Sometimes that's how it goes. But you keep building things anyway. That's the job. She nodded slowly. That's the job. Molly pushed her plate aside and placed her stuffed fox carefully on the table between us. She looked at me with those large, assessing eyes. His name is Rusty, she said. I looked at the fox. His lopsided eye looked back at me. Hey, Rusty, I said, and I reached out and shook one of the fox's small, worn paws. Molly looked at her fox. Then she looked at me. Then she smiled. It wasn't a big smile. It wasn't the kind that lights up a room. It was small and private, the kind of smile that a child keeps mostly to herself, because she's decided something and doesn't quite need to announce it. But Claire saw it. I know she saw it because something changed in the way she was looking at me. Not warmer exactly. Something more complicated than warm. Something that looked like recognition and fear, sitting in the same space, shoulder to shoulder. The check came. Claire reached for it immediately. I told you I was covering this. You don't have to do that. I told you I would. It was a steak sandwich and a sparkling water. It was $12. I know what it was. She placed her card on the tray. It was $12, and you let a stranger sit down and lie to your face, and you didn't make it weird. She paused. Thank you. I let her pay. We put on our coats. Molly insisted on carrying Rusty a specific way pressed against her shoulder, with his face pointing outward so he could see where they were going. She explained this very seriously, while her mother helped her with her zipper. At the door, Claire turned and looked at me one more time. Nathan, she said, I'm sorry about tonight. Don't be. You come here every Thursday. Every Thursday. She nodded, like she was filing it. Good night, she said. Good night, Claire. Molly tugged on her mother's coat and said something I didn't catch, and they went out into the November cold, and the door swung shut behind them, and Marco appeared at my elbow to collect the check tray and said, New friends. I have no idea, I said, and I meant it absolutely. I went home that night and read the rest of my structural report and went to bed at my usual time and told myself it had been a strange evening, but it was finished. That was the rational, reasonable, predictable thing to believe. The following 2 weeks were completely normal. Work was busy. I had a city council presentation on a pedestrian bridge project that required 3 separate revisions because a council member kept confusing load capacity with lane width, which are not remotely the same thing. I ate dinner at my desk twice. I drove home in the dark. I watched too much television. I was fine. 2 Thursdays later, I walked into a coffee shop on the 16th Street Mall at 11:20 in the morning because I had a site meeting at noon and I needed coffee badly enough to be willing to stand in line for it. I was 3 people back from the counter when I heard a voice. It was not a quiet voice. Mom, your fake boyfriend is here. I turned around. Half the coffee shop turned around. Claire was standing near the window table with a laptop open and a coffee cup and an expression that suggested she was currently deciding whether the floor would agree to swallow her if she asked politely enough. Molly was already on her feet pointing. At me. Very directly. With extraordinary conviction. The woman behind me in line made a sound that was very close to a laugh she was trying to suppress. I looked at Claire. Claire looked at me. She was the exact shade of red that you become when a 6-year-old has publicly announced one of your recent life choices at sufficient volume for approximately 20 strangers. Then I laughed. Not a polite laugh, an actual one. The kind that comes up before you have time to decide whether it's appropriate. I stepped out of line. I walked to their table. I looked at the chair across from Claire, which had a coat on it, and I said, "May I?" "Please," Claire said, with the specific desperation of someone who wants to move past the previous 15 seconds as quickly as possible. "Yes, sit down. I'm so sorry. She's been talking about you." I told Grandma about the fake boyfriend. Molly informed me helpfully, climbing back into her own chair. Grandma said it was very interesting. "Molly," Claire said. Grandma used her very interesting voice, the one she uses when she's actually interested. "Molly, I'm just saying what happened." I sat down. I looked at Claire, who had both hands wrapped around her coffee cup in the way that suggested she was using it as an anchor. "How's the renovation project?" I asked. She looked at me for a moment like she couldn't quite believe the question. Then she exhaled. "The rooftop terrace people finally accepted that the building won't support it. They want a mural instead." "That's better for the building." "It is. The mural artist is extremely particular about natural light angles." "Everyone's particular about something." "Apparently." She looked at me. Something shifted, the embarrassment fading, replaced by that careful watching thing I'd noticed before. "You're not going to mention the fake boyfriend announcement," I considered. "It might come up if Marco asks how I've been." She pressed her lips together. "That was Marco. He's been my Thursday server for 4 years. He has opinions." "I see." A pause. "I'm still sorry about that." "Don't be. What do you want to drink? I'm still going to get in line." "You don't have to." "What do you want, Claire?" She looked at me. A long, careful, measuring look. The kind that is trying to determine the exact nature of what it's looking at. "Medium latte," she said. "1 sugar." "Molly." Molly was watching me with the focused attention of someone taking notes. "Hot chocolate," she said, "with the little marshmallows. Not the big ones, the little ones." "I'll ask." "They sometimes only have the big ones. If they only have the big ones, I want apple juice instead." "Noted." "In a cup, not a box. I'm 6. "Obviously." I got back in line. And when I brought back a medium latte and a hot chocolate with the correct marshmallows, the little ones, and yes, they had them, and sat down across from Claire Bennett in a coffee shop on a Tuesday morning, while her daughter explained to me at considerable length the specific and comprehensive unfairness of her school's rock collection policy. Something settled in my chest that I didn't have a name for yet. It felt like the specific quiet sound a structure makes when it finds its center of gravity. I didn't think about it too hard. I just sat there. And it was the best 25 minutes I'd had in a very long time. I went to the site meeting at noon. I came back to my desk. I opened my structural report. And I thought about medium lattes and small marshmallows and a 6-year-old who called me her mother's fake boyfriend with approximately 0% embarrassment. And I thought, I hope that wasn't the last time. It wasn't. 3 days later, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. The message said, "Molly wants to know if you actually know how to fix a bicycle, or if you were just being impressive. Apparently this is a matter of some urgency. Claire." I stared at my phone for a moment. Then I typed back, "I can fix a bicycle. Why does this feel like a test?" 3 minutes later. "Because it is one. She has strong opinions about people who claim skills they don't have. If you're bluffing, this is your last chance to admit it." I typed, "I'm not bluffing." 4 minutes of silence. Then, Saturday 10 a.m. Washington Park. She has a rear derailleur problem and very high expectations. I set my phone down on my desk. I looked at my structural analysis report. I looked at my phone. I picked up my phone and typed, "I'll bring tools." And then I sat there for a full 30 seconds before I let myself smile because I was alone in my office and nobody was watching and I was allowed. Saturday came. I brought tools. The bicycle had a rear derailleur problem, and also a chain that needed cleaning, and a brake cable that was fraying in a way that was genuinely concerning. And Molly stood beside me the entire time I worked, and provided commentary, and asked questions, and handed me the wrong tool 3 times, and the right tool twice, and told me at some length about a girl in her class named Jade, who had a bicycle with 12 gears, and how Molly only had 6 gears, which was technically fewer, but she wasn't bothered about it, she just thought I should know. Claire sat on a park bench 10 feet away with her laptop, and tried to work, and periodically looked over at us with an expression I still couldn't quite read. When I finished, Molly tested the bicycle with the focused intensity of a professional quality control inspector. She rode in a careful circle, then a larger circle. Then she braked, which worked correctly, and looked back at me. "Good," she said. "High praise," Claire said from the bench without looking up. "I said good," Molly said. "She said good," I agreed. "I heard her say good," Claire said. "I have good hearing." Molly rode another circle, and then rode it in the other direction, and then rode back to where I was packing up my tools, and watched me for a moment. "Did you eat breakfast?" she said. I looked at her. "I had coffee," I said. She looked deeply unimpressed. "Mom," she called over her shoulder. "He only had coffee." "That's not breakfast," Claire said. "I know it's not breakfast," Molly said, as if this were the most obvious thing anyone had ever confirmed. "That's why I said it." She looked back at me. "We were going to get pancakes. You should come." And this is the part I come back to when I think about the beginning. Not the restaurant, not the coffee shop, not even the phone message. It was this moment. A 6-year-old with a freshly tuned bicycle and a fox somewhere in her bike basket standing in the November sun in Washington Park, telling me I should come get pancakes. It wasn't a performance. It wasn't a strategy. It was just a child who had decided something and saw no reason to hide it. I looked at Claire. Claire had closed her laptop. She looked at me steadily, and I couldn't tell if she was hoping I'd say yes or hoping I'd give her an easy out. "I like pancakes," I said. Molly nodded, satisfied, like this had been the only reasonable answer all along. And the 3 of us walked out of the park together in the cold November light, and Molly pedaled her bicycle ahead of us on the path and called back over her shoulder about something she'd seen in a book about animals, and Claire walked beside me and didn't say anything for a moment, and then said quietly, "You didn't have to say yes." "I know," I said. A pause. "Thank you," she said, "for the derailleur." "Don't thank me. The brake cable was the real problem. Another month and that becomes an emergency." "I know. I kept meaning to take it in." She stopped, started again. "I was going to take it to a shop. There's always something more urgent." "I know. You don't have to keep fixing things." I watched Molly ahead of us on the path riding in careful, happy circles. "I know," I said. We walked on, and I thought about bridges. About how the most important part of a bridge isn't the dramatic span across the gap. It's the foundation beneath, the part nobody sees, the part that has to hold steady every single day in every kind of weather, whether anyone's watching or not, the part that has to be reliable before anything else can work. I didn't say that out loud. It seemed like too much for a Tuesday in November after bicycle repair and before pancakes. But I thought it. And somewhere behind that thought was something quieter and more honest. I wanted to be that kind of reliable. Not for a performance. Not for 5 minutes. For as long as I was allowed to show up. I just didn't know yet how much showing up would cost, or whether I'd be strong enough to keep doing it when the price got higher than I'd ever planned to pay. The pancakes were terrible. Not Callahan's terrible, not restaurant, terrible. Claire's kitchen, terrible, the specific kind of terrible that happens when a person who is excellent at many things attempts to make pancakes from scratch on a Saturday morning while simultaneously answering work emails on her phone and supervising a 6-year-old who has strong opinions about batter consistency. Molly had invited Nathan inside when they got back from the park. Not asked. Invited. The way you invite someone who has already been decided upon. Nathan stood in the kitchen doorway while Claire looked at the first batch and said very quietly, "That's not right." "No," Nathan agreed. They're not supposed to be that color. No. I followed the recipe. Did you measure the baking powder? A pause. I measured something. Molly was already on a stool at the counter, watching this exchange with the patient expression of someone who has seen this movie before and knows exactly how it ends. There's a diner 3 blocks over, she offered. They have the little marshmallows too, in the hot chocolate. Nathan looked at Claire. Claire looked at the burnt pancakes. I'll get my coat, she said. That was the 3rd Saturday. By the 5th, Nathan had stopped being surprised when his phone buzzed on a Friday evening with a message from Claire about something Molly had said, or something that had broken, or something that, if he was reading the subtext correctly, was neither of those things, but was actually Claire finding a reason to maintain a connection she hadn't yet decided what to call. I didn't push. He never pushed. He just answered the messages and showed up when he was invited and found that showing up was strangely the easiest thing he'd done in years. By December, they had a rhythm. Thursday evenings at Callahan's were still Nathan's alone, but Saturday mornings had become something else entirely. Sometimes it was the diner. Sometimes it was the park. Once it was the Denver Museum of Nature and Science, because Molly had a school assignment about geology and had somehow concluded that Nathan, as a civil engineer, was a geological expert. I work with rock, he told her as they stood in front of a display case of mineral samples. But mostly in the context of making sure it doesn't move. So you know rocks, she said. I know enough rocks. Which one is that? She pointed at a large purple-veined specimen. Amethyst. She looked at him, looked at the rock, looked back at him with the expression of someone updating a mental file. Okay, she said. You know rocks. Claire laughed from somewhere behind them, and Nathan felt something shift in him that he didn't examine too closely because he was learning that some things were better approached sideways in peripheral vision rather than looked at directly before you were ready for what you'd see. January came cold and serious. Nathan had a major project deadline, a pedestrian bridge over a drainage corridor on the west side of the city, and worked 3 weekends in a row without the kind of air in his schedule that Saturday mornings required. He sent Claire a message the second Friday explaining. She replied almost immediately. Don't apologize, work is work. Molly says tell you that the bicycle's rear wheel is making a new sound. He typed back, probably just needs the axle nuts checked. I'll look at it when I'm back. 4 seconds later, she's going to hold you to that. 6 seconds after that, so am I. He sat with his phone in his hand for a moment in his quiet apartment and thought about how 2 months ago he had known exactly what his life was going to be every day for the foreseeable future. And now there were 2 people in Denver who expected him to check a bicycle axle when he had time. And the terrifying thing was that this felt like something to look forward to rather than something to manage. He finished the bridge project on a Wednesday evening in late January and drove straight from the office to Claire's townhouse without messaging first, which he had never done, and knocked on the door at 7:15 with a set of bicycle tools in his hand. Claire opened the door. She looked at the tools. She looked at him. You finished, she said. I finished. You drove here. The axle nuts. She stepped back from the door. Molly, she called toward the back of the house. Nathan's here. He says something about axle nuts. From somewhere in the house, I know what axle nuts are. She doesn't know what axle nuts are, Claire said. I gathered. He fixed the bicycle in the small space beside the back door while Molly supervised, and Claire made actual dinner, not pancakes. Actual dinner, something involving chicken that smelled significantly better than the pancakes had looked, and Nathan thought, this is it. This specific arrangement of things. This is the thing I didn't know I was missing. He didn't say it out loud, but he thought it with a clarity that he usually reserved for structural calculations. The kind of clarity that means you've checked the math 3 times and you're confident in the answer. He stayed for dinner. He stayed after dinner while Molly showed him a book about rocks she'd gotten from the library and explained her system for categorizing the ones she'd collected, which was elaborate and logical, and also partly based on which ones she thought looked like they had personalities. Rocks don't have personalities, Nathan said. Molly looked at him with the expression of someone who has just encountered a gap in another person's education. This one, she said, holding up a piece of rose quartz, is shy. You can tell because it's pink. That's not... This one, she continued, holding up a dark basalt fragment, is serious. This one is funny. A pale piece of limestone. This one is trying too hard. A large piece of granite with unusual veining. And this one, she said, holding up a small smooth river stone that was perfectly ordinary in every way, is very dependable. Nathan looked at the stone. Why that one? Because it's not fancy, she said. But you can always count on it. A silence. Claire, who was washing dishes and had presumably heard every word of this exchange, said nothing. But Nathan could see her hands had gone still in the sink for a moment before she started moving again. Can I hold the dependable one? Nathan said. Molly handed it to him with the gravity of someone making an important transfer. He turned it over in his hand. Small, smooth, unremarkable. The kind of thing you could carry in your pocket and forget about and then find again weeks later and remember exactly where it came from. You should keep it, Molly said. I couldn't. I have more, she said. He put the stone in his pocket. He still has it. February arrived, and with it the first sign that Grant Bennett was paying attention to things he had no business tracking. It started small. Molly mentioned at dinner a Thursday this time, because somewhere in the past 6 weeks Thursday evenings had become the three of them at Claire's kitchen table, rather than Nathan alone at Callahan's, and he'd made his peace with that trade. Molly mentioned that her dad had asked about Nathan. He wanted to know what you do, she said. Nathan looked at Claire. Claire looked at her plate. What did you tell him? Nathan said. I told him you fix bridges and bicycles, Molly said with the satisfied confidence of someone who has given a complete and accurate answer. That's accurate, Nathan said. He asked if you sleep here. The table went very quiet. Molly continued eating her pasta without apparent awareness that she had just placed a small grenade on the table between the two adults. Nathan said carefully, What did you say? I said no, obviously, Molly said. You don't have a room here. Your stuff's at your apartment. Right. He asked if you were going to get a room here. Claire put her fork down. Molly, she said, did Daddy ask you these questions in your room when he dropped you off, or? In the car, Molly said. On the way home from his house last weekend. He asked a lot of questions. He asked if you were happy. What did you say? Molly looked up from her pasta and looked at her mother with the direct, uncomplicated gaze of a child who has not yet learned to package difficult truths in diplomatic wrapping. I said yes, she said. Because you are. You laugh more now. Claire's eyes went briefly bright before she blinked it back. Thank you, baby, she said quietly. Nathan looked at his plate. He thought about Grant in a car, asking his 6-year-old daughter questions that no 6-year-old should be required to answer. Questions calibrated to extract information. Questions that said, I am watching. I am still watching. You do not get to build anything without me watching. He thought about what kind of man does that. He thought about what kind of man he wanted to be in contrast. He said nothing at the table. He helped with dishes. He said goodnight to Molly, who made him do a proper handshake with Rusty before he was allowed to leave, which was the protocol now. He put on his coat in the entryway. And then Claire said quietly, I'm sorry. Don't be. He's going to keep doing this. He's going to keep asking her things. I know. It's not fair to her. No, it's not. A pause. Nathan. She stopped, started again. If this gets complicated, if this becomes something that causes problems for you, you can tell me. You can say it's too much. He looked at her for a long moment. Tell me what actually helps Molly, he said. I'll do that. Not what helps Grant. Claire looked at him the way she sometimes did, that careful searching look that was trying to find the catch, the condition, the fine print. The place where the reliability ran out. You mean that, she said. I don't say things I don't mean, Claire. She looked at him for another beat. I know, she said. That's what makes it hard. He wanted to ask her what that meant. He didn't. He said goodnight and drove home through the February cold and sat in his apartment for a while in the quiet and thought about what she'd said. That's what makes it hard. He turned it over the way he'd turned over the smooth river stone, looking for the shape of it. And what he found sitting there in the quiet was this: Claire Bennett was not afraid that he would let her down. She was afraid that he wouldn't. She was afraid of what it meant to have someone you could count on, because the last person she'd tried to count on had used her trust like a lever. He understood this in the abstract. He did not yet understand fully how much it would test him. That came in March. The school assignment arrived on a Tuesday. Molly's teacher had given the class a project: draw your family and write one sentence about each person. Standard second-grade material. Normal, warm, uncomplicated homework for children from uncomplicated families. Claire found out about it when she went to help Molly with homework after dinner. Molly had already finished. She held up the drawing. 3 figures. Crayon slightly uneven. The perspective of someone who draws people as stick figures with circular heads and is very serious about the project anyway. The house behind them was blue with a crooked chimney and 4 windows that were not quite evenly spaced. On the left, a figure with long hair and a dress. Written above, Mommy. In the middle, a small figure with a ponytail. Written above, Me. On the right, a taller figure in what appeared to be a jacket. Written above, Nate. Nathan's name. Not Dad. Not my mom's boyfriend. Not the man from the restaurant. Nate. Above his figure, Molly had written her one sentence. He fixes things, and he shows up. Claire looked at the drawing for a long time. Molly, she said carefully, do you want to add anyone else Daddy isn't in the picture? Molly looked at the drawing. The assignment says draw your family, she said. Yes. Daddy doesn't live with us. No, but he's still. Nate shows up, Molly said simply. And then she picked up the drawing and put it in her folder and moved on to her math worksheet, and Claire sat at the kitchen table and stared at the spot where the drawing had been. She didn't tell Nathan about it that night. She held it for 2 days. And then on Thursday evening, when they were both in the kitchen cleaning up after dinner, and Molly was in the living room watching something on television, she told him. She described it quietly. The blue house with the crooked chimney. The 3 figures. The sentence. He fixes things, and he shows up. Nathan stopped drying the glass in his hand. He set it down on the counter. He was quiet for a moment that stretched until Claire said, Nathan. Yeah, he said. I wanted you to know. Yeah. Another pause. His throat felt tighter than usual. She drew a family, Claire said. She drew you into her family, Nathan. She's 6 years old, and she's already decided. I know. That means something. I know it does. Does it mean something to you? He turned and looked at her. Claire, he said, and his voice was lower than he intended. That child handed me a river stone and told me it was dependable, and then told me to keep it. I've had it in my pocket for 3 weeks. That means everything to me. Claire pressed her lips together. Okay, she said. Okay. I'm still scared. I know. That's okay. It's not just about me. If you leave, if this doesn't work and you leave, she will have lost someone she counted on. Again. I'm not planning to leave. People don't usually plan it. No, he said. They don't. The silence between them held something fragile and real. But I'm still here, he said. She looked at him. You're still here, she said. Every Thursday, for the foreseeable future. Something moved across her face, relief and terror moving in the same direction. Okay, she said again, softly. From the living room, Molly called, You guys are taking a long time with the dishes. We're having a conversation, Claire called back. About what? Nathan looked at Claire. Claire looked at Nathan. Riverstones, Nathan said. A pause. That's a weird thing to talk about, Molly said, and went back to her television show. Claire laughed. Small, surprised, aimed at the floor. It was the best sound Nathan had heard in weeks. The letter arrived on a Monday in late March, and Claire called Nathan at 4 in the afternoon, which she had never done before, and her voice was careful in a way that meant she was doing significant work to keep it that way. Grant's attorney sent a letter, she said. Nathan sat very still at his desk. What kind of letter? The kind that uses phrases like changing domestic environment and potential impact on the minor child's stability. A pause. He's questioning whether having you around is appropriate. He's using the school drawing. Someone I don't know how he found out about it. Maybe Molly mentioned it during his weekend, but he knows about the drawing Nathan. He's saying my judgment is compromised, and he wants to revisit the custody arrangement. Nathan breathed. He kept his voice level. He had learned to do this from years of project presentations, where bad news had to be delivered to rooms full of people who were going to make it worse if they panicked. Claire, he said, listen to me. Do you have a family attorney? Yes, Sandra Okafor. She handled the original divorce. Call her today, this afternoon. Don't respond to Grant's letter yourself. Let Sandra respond. Okay. A pause. Okay. And listen, this is just a letter. It's not a ruling. It's not a decision. It's a tactic. I know what it is, she said, and there was a flash of steel under the careful voice. I lived with him for 7 years. I know exactly what this is. I know you do. I wanted to say it out loud. A breath. He's doing this because he saw us in the park, she said. Someone told him. Or he drove by. I don't know. He's been looking for a reason. He'll keep looking. Yes, let him look, Nathan said. You're not doing anything wrong, and neither am I. Silence. Then very quietly, he's going to come after you. Let him. Nathan. Claire, I'm a civil engineer who repairs bicycles and eats grilled cheese with your daughter and shows up for dinner. There is nothing there for him to use. A long pause. Are you scared? She asked. He thought about it honestly. A little, he said. But not of Grant. Then what? Of being the reason this gets harder for you. She didn't answer immediately. When she did, her voice was quieter. You're not, she said. He nodded to himself. Call Sandra, he said. Today. Today, she agreed. He hung up and sat at his desk for a few minutes and thought about load thresholds. About how every structure has a point past which it fractures. And about how the difference between a bridge that holds and one that doesn't is almost never about the dramatic moment of stress. It's about what was built into the foundation before anyone was watching. He had been building something. He hadn't been entirely sure what. Now he knew, and he understood sitting there in his office in late March that Grant Bennett had just made his first real mistake. Because Grant was treating Nathan like someone who could be scared off. And the thing Grant had not yet understood, the thing Claire was only beginning to understand, and the thing Molly, with her 6-year-old clarity, had apparently understood immediately, was that Nathan Cole did not scare easily. He scared appropriately. Thoughtfully. He was afraid of the right things, and being afraid of the right things meant he was going to keep showing up anyway. The custody letter from Grant's attorney created a ripple that reached into every part of the following weeks. Claire became quieter, more careful. She started declining small things. Nathan's offer to pick Molly up from school, when Claire had a late client meeting, his offer to stay for dinner on a Tuesday when the clock was running long. Little withdrawals. Careful protective contractions. Nathan watched it happen and understood it and hated it. He knew what she was doing. She was creating distance so that if Grant's attorney pointed at Nathan and said, "This man's presence is disruptive," Claire could say, "Look, we've already been responsible. We've already scaled back." She was protecting Molly by pushing Nathan to the edges of the frame. He let it happen because it was her call to make and her daughter to protect. But on a Wednesday evening in April, when she canceled their Thursday plans, citing a work deadline that he was fairly sure was not as urgent as she was making it sound, he texted back one sentence. "I understand, but I'm not going anywhere." She didn't reply that night. The next morning before 8, his phone buzzed. "I know," she wrote. "That's not the problem. The problem is, I don't know what to do with someone who actually stays." He read it twice. Then he put his phone in his pocket and drove to his site meeting and spent 4 hours measuring and documenting a pedestrian bridge underpass and thought about what she'd written the entire time. I don't know what to do with someone who actually stays. He called her that evening. She picked up on the second ring. Tell me about Grant, he said, not asking exactly, offering a space, a silence. Then she started talking. She talked for an hour. Not the bullet points he'd gotten before the career derailment, the custody conflict, the letter. The actual story. 7 years of a marriage that looked from the outside like a successful partnership between two capable people. And from the inside was something else entirely. Grant had never raised his voice, she said. Never. Not once in 7 years. He didn't need to. He had other tools. He controlled money in ways that looked like responsibility. He controlled schedules in ways that looked like planning. He offered help and then withheld it at strategic moments, so that Claire was always slightly off balance, always slightly dependent, always slightly unsure whether her own competence was real or was something he was graciously allowing her to perform. And when she finally left, when she found the clarity to leave, he didn't stop. He just changed tactics. Now he controlled through the law, through their daughter, through the social narrative of a man who was simply concerned about his child's stability. The worst part, Claire said, and her voice was steady in the way it always was when she was working hardest, is that I never trusted my own reactions during the marriage. When something felt wrong, he'd explain why I was misreading it. For years I thought I was the problem. I thought I was too sensitive, too demanding, too emotional. A pause. It took me 3 years after leaving him to trust myself again. Nathan held the phone. I thought about all the ways he could respond to this. The reassurances available to him. You're none of those things. He was wrong. You're stronger than he knows. He chose something else. What does trusting yourself feel like now? He said. A long silence. Strange, she said finally. Like a muscle you stopped using. It works, but you notice it. You're using it. Some days. More days than before. A pause. Yes, she said. More days than before. Then that's what matters. She was quiet. Nathan, she said. Yeah. Why are you still doing this? He could have said many things. He chose the truest one. Because when Molly handed me that river stone and told me it was dependable and to keep it, I thought I want to be the kind of man who deserves that description. He paused. I don't know if I am yet, but I want to be. Claire said nothing for a moment. When she finally spoke, her voice was different, lower. The careful layer set aside. Thursday, she said. Come for dinner Thursday. Molly wants to show you her new rock. What kind? She says it's malachite, but I think she's mispronouncing something she read online. It might actually be malachite. They come in green. She'll be insufferable about being right. She's always insufferable about being right. She gets it from Grant, Claire said, and then immediately he could hear it. She caught herself. Waited to see if he'd take the opening. He didn't. Dinner Thursday, he said. I'll be there. Okay, she said. He showed up Thursday. Molly's rock was in fact malachite. She was deeply, completely, entirely insufferable about it. And across the kitchen table, Claire looked at Nathan with the expression that he was beginning to finally recognize, not the careful watching, not the searching for the catch. Just someone deciding to stop bracing and see what happened next. He didn't say anything. He ate his dinner. He stayed. And then one Saturday in May, without drama or announcement or anything that looked from the outside like a turning point, Grant Bennett showed up at Claire's townhouse. He knocked. Claire answered. Behind her in the small side space near the back door. Nathan was crouched next to Molly's bicycle, adjusting the seat height because Molly had informed him that morning that she had grown half an inch and the seat was now wrong. Grant looked past Claire. His gaze found Nathan. Then it found the tools. Then it found Molly, who was 5 feet away watching Nathan work and telling him about something that had happened at school, involving a substitute teacher and a misunderstanding about the rock collection policy. Grant stood very still for a moment. Nathan kept working. He didn't stand up. He didn't make anything of the moment. He just kept adjusting the seat because the seat needed adjusting, and that was the task. Grant, Claire said. Her voice was neutral. Your weekend isn't until next Friday." "I know," Grant said. "I wanted to pick up Molly's jacket. She left it last time." "I can get it," Claire said. "Wait here." She left. Silence. Grant looked at Nathan. Nathan looked at the seat post clamp. Grant said, "You know she already has a father." Nathan didn't answer immediately. He finished tightening the clamp. He checked the height. He looked over at Molly, who was watching the exchange with her fox pressed to her chest, and her eyes moving between the two men with careful attention. Then he looked at Grant. "Then be one," he said. He said it quietly, not with aggression, not with performance. The way you say a simple structural fact to someone who is arguing with the physics. Grant had no answer. Claire returned with the jacket. Grant took it. He looked at Nathan one more time. Nathan met his eyes and held them not in challenge but with the specific settled quality of a man who is not going anywhere and has no anxiety about the fact. Grant left. The door closed. Molly watched the closed door for a moment. Then she turned to Nathan. "Can you check the brakes too?" she said. "The left one feels soft." "Sure," Nathan said. He checked the brakes. Claire stood in the entryway for a moment, not quite in the room, not quite out of it. Then she walked into the kitchen and started making coffee, and didn't say anything, and Nathan understood that she was doing the particular work of not crying in front of her daughter. He gave her the time. He fixed the brake. Molly told him about the substitute teacher, and when Nathan finally straightened up and put his tools away and walked into the kitchen, Claire was standing at the counter with 2 mugs of coffee, and her eyes were normal again, and she held one out to him. He took it. They didn't say anything. They didn't need to. Outside somewhere down the street, Grant Bennett was walking to his car with a child's jacket in his hands and the knowledge that the man in that kitchen was not performing. That was the thing he could not argue with. That was the thing he could not control. Nathan was simply there. Day after day, adjustment after adjustment, dinner after dinner, rock after rock, bicycle break after bicycle break. The least dramatic thing in the world. The most devastating thing Grant Bennett had ever encountered. Because you cannot compete with someone who is not competing. You cannot fight someone who is not fighting. You can only watch them stay. The summer came in fast and hot, the way Denver summers do, and with it came the particular rhythm that the 3 of them had settled into, without ever formally agreeing on it. Thursdays were dinner at Claire's. Saturday mornings were flexible. Sometimes the park, sometimes the museum. Once a disastrous attempt at mini-golf that ended with Molly declaring the sport fundamentally unfair and Nathan agreeing with her on structural grounds because 2 of the holes had inclines that were genuinely unreasonable. Claire had laughed so hard at that she'd had to sit down on a bench and collect herself, while Molly explained the geometry of the problem to Nathan in considerable detail. It was the best Saturday Nathan could remember in years. June passed. July arrived. Nathan became the kind of presence in Molly's life that she no longer remarked upon, which he understood, was actually the highest possible status a person could achieve with a 6-year-old. She didn't announce him anymore. She didn't perform excitement when he arrived. She just folded him into the ongoing narrative of her day, the way you fold in someone who has always been part of the story. "Nathan the substitute came back," she'd say, dropping her backpack on the kitchen floor, not even looking up to confirm he was there, just knowing. "The rock policy is still wrong." "Still working on it," Nathan would say. "You should write a letter." "I'll look into it." "I already looked into it. I need an adult signature." "We'll talk about it." She would nod satisfied and go wash her hands, and the evening would proceed, and Nathan would catch Claire looking at him across the kitchen with that expression, the one that wasn't quite a smile, but held something careful and warm and terrified all at once. He had learned not to push on that expression. He just let it be there and kept doing the dishes. What he hadn't learned yet. What he was still learning slowly. The way you learn things that require patience. Was that the closer you get to someone who has been badly hurt, the more you remind them of everything they're risking. Not because you're dangerous. Because you matter. And mattering is the most frightening thing of all to someone who has learned that the people who matter most are the ones who have the most power to damage you. The understanding arrived on a Thursday evening in early August. and it arrived through Sandra Okafor, Claire's attorney, in the form of a phone call that Claire took in the bedroom while Molly was in the living room explaining something to Nathan about a documentary she had seen about volcanoes. Nathan heard Claire's voice through the closed door. Not words. Tone. He heard the specific cadence of someone receiving information they had been bracing for. Molly was still talking about volcanoes. Nathan kept his attention on her. He asked questions about the difference between shield volcanoes and stratovolcanoes, because Molly had mentioned both, and he wanted to make sure she knew he was listening. She knew every difference. She explained them at length. Claire came out of the bedroom 12 minutes later. Her face was arranged carefully. She sat down at the kitchen table and said, "Molly, can you go pick out your pajamas? We'll do reading in a few minutes." Molly looked at her mother, then at Nathan. 6 years old, and she read the room with the accuracy of someone twice her age. "Okay," she said. She picked up Rusty from the couch cushion and walked down the hall without asking questions. Nathan waited. Claire said, "Grant filed. Custody modification. Expanded custody. He wants 3 weekends a month instead of 2 plus alternating holidays, plus the right to be informed of and consulted on any significant changes to Molly's, quote, domestic environment, unquote." She said it flatly, like she was reading from the document, which she probably was from memory. "Sandra says the domestic environment language is aimed at you." Nathan said nothing. His argument is that Molly is being exposed to an unstable situation, that I've introduced a new relationship too quickly and without appropriate consideration for how it affects her emotionally and socially. Claire stopped. He submitted the school drawing as evidence. The family drawing. He's arguing that Molly's confusion about the definition of family is a direct result of my choices, that she's being encouraged to replace her father with someone else. Her voice stayed level through all of it, but Nathan could hear where it cost her, could hear the places where the evenness required the most work. What does Sandra say? Sandra says his argument has limited merit, but non-zero merit. Courts take a very careful position on anything that touches the child's relationship with both parents. She says the most effective thing right now is to demonstrate stability. Documented, consistent, appropriate stability. What does that mean practically? It means... Claire stopped. Started again. It means Sandra thinks we should be thoughtful about how visible your role is. In Molly's school records at pickup at school events. Not hidden, just measured. So that Grant can't stand up in mediation and say this man is functioning as a co-parent without any legal framework. Nathan sat with this. He turned it over. The way he turned over all structural problems, looking for the actual load-bearing element, the thing that everything else depended on. "Does Sandra think he'll win?" he said. "She thinks the filing is primarily tactical. He wants to make me defensive. He wants me to spend time and money and emotional energy responding instead of building." A pause. "He knows what he's doing." "He always has." "Yes." Claire looked at her hands on the table. "Nathan, I need to ask you something." "Ask?" "If I pull back, if things look different for a while, I need you to understand why. I'm not..." She stopped, pressed her lips together. "I'm not pushing you away. I'm trying to protect something that I want to keep." The honesty of it landed in him solidly. She was telling him she wanted to keep what they had. She was telling him she was scared of losing it. She was asking him to understand that her retreat was not rejection. He understood all of it. "Okay," he said. "Okay. I'll follow your lead. Whatever Sandra thinks is best for Molly's case, that's what we do." Claire looked at him. "You're not upset." "I'm not upset." "You should be a little." "Why? Because Grant is being Grant." Nathan shook his head. "I knew this was coming since the letter in March. So did you. We're not surprised." "No," she said. "We're not." "Then we handle it." She was quiet for a moment. "Sandra also said something else," Claire said. "What?" "She said that Grant's own history with Molly is relevant. His inconsistency. The missed school events. The weekends where he drops her with his parents instead of being there himself." A pause. "She said that a man who shows up reliably for a child, even without legal standing, is actually evidence in favor of stability rather than against it. She said the drawing might help us. Nathan looked at her. The drawing he submitted as evidence. The drawing he submitted as evidence, Claire confirmed. He showed a 6-year-old's crayon rendering of the 3 most consistent adults in her daily life and called it proof of instability. A small, exhausted, almost laugh. Sandra called it a gift. Nathan sat back in his chair. He thought about a man submitting a child's crayon drawing to a custody attorney to argue that the child was confused. A drawing that said in a 6-year-old's handwriting, he fixes things and he shows up. I thought about what it must have felt like for Grant to look at that drawing and see not his daughter's happiness, but a threat. He thought about what kind of man that made you. Okay, Nathan said. Then we let Sandra work. And in the meantime, you tell me what you need. I need... She stopped. Her voice for the first time that evening lost its carefully maintained evenness. I need this to not be the thing that makes you leave. He looked at her directly. Claire, I know you said, I'm not leaving. She looked at him with something raw and unguarded that she usually kept behind the careful face. Okay, she said. Okay, he said back. From down the hall, Mom, I picked pajamas. I need help with the button. Claire closed her eyes briefly. When she opened them, something had settled. I'll be right there, she called. She stood up, looked at Nathan one more time. Stay for Molly's reading, she said. I'll stay, he said. He stayed. August became September, and the rhythm shifted the way Claire had described. Nathan was still present. Thursdays, often Saturdays. But he stepped back from school pickup. From the Tuesday dinners that had started to feel routine. He didn't disappear. Claire had been clear that disappearing was not the ask. But he recalibrated. He made himself a little less visible in the specific ways that Sandra had flagged. It was harder than he expected, not because of any dramatic absence, because of the small things. He would finish work on a Tuesday and realize there was nothing on his calendar for the evening, and feel the specific weight of a space that had been filled and was now temporarily empty. He would drive past the diner on his way home and think about Molly and the small marshmallows. He would sit at his desk and find himself checking his phone for messages that weren't coming because Claire was being careful and he had agreed she should be careful. He filled the time with work. He always had work. There was a new project, a pedestrian overpass connecting 2 neighborhoods that had been separated by a rail corridor for 40 years. He threw himself into the specifications. He stayed late. He drove to site visits at 7 in the morning when nobody asked him to. His co-worker, Brianna, who had the desk adjacent to his and had known him for 6 years, looked at him one Wednesday afternoon and said, "You've submitted 4 revised specifications this week." There were 4 things that needed revising. Nathan, go home. I'm fine. You're not fine. You're doing the thing you do when something is bothering you, where you turn into a specification-generating machine. She looked at him. Is this about the woman? He looked at his screen. There's a woman, he said. There have been approximately 37 micro-expressions on your face over the past 2 months that suggest there is a woman. Also, Marco at Callahan's told my husband you've been eating dinner with someone. Marco talks too much. Marco is a delight and you know it. Is everything okay? Nathan put down his pen. He thought about how to answer that question with the honest precision it deserved. I think so, he said. I think it's going to be okay. I just have to wait for some things to resolve. Brianna looked at him carefully. Are you in or out? She said. What do you mean? I mean, are you actually in this thing, whatever it is, or are you keeping one foot out because it got complicated? She said it without judgment, just with the directness of someone who has watched you long enough to identify your patterns. Because those are different problems. Nathan looked at her. I'm in, he said. Then stop revising specifications you already finalized and go home. He went home. He sat in his apartment in the September quiet and looked at the Riverstone on his kitchen counter. He'd taken it out of his pocket when his coat went into summer storage and put it somewhere he could see it and thought about what Brianna had said. Are you in or out? He knew the answer, had known it since the park in November. But there was something useful about saying it plainly, even just to himself in an empty apartment on a Wednesday night. He was in, completely, and the waiting was not going to change that. Mediation was scheduled for a Thursday in late September. Claire did not ask Nathan to come. He did not offer. This was her process, her attorney, her daughter. His role was to have been consistent and reliable in the ways that Sandra would describe if asked, and then to stay out of the legal architecture and let Claire handle it. She called him afterward at 4:15, and he was in his car in a parking structure finishing a site visit debrief, and he picked up on the first ring. "How did it go?" "Grant lost his composure," she said. Nathan waited. He was controlled for the first hour. His attorney had coached him well. He was concerned parent Grant, worried about stability Grant. Then Sandra started asking about his attendance record at Molly's events. Specific events. Dates. Claire's voice held something that was not quite satisfaction, but was adjacent to it. He missed her spring concert. He missed her first day of second grade. He missed a birthday party she specifically told him about 4 times. 3 times in the last 6 months, he'd dropped her with his parents for the whole weekend without telling Claire in advance. What happened? Sandra laid all of it out very calmly, very specifically. And Grant, he started talking about me, about my choices, about how I was encouraging Molly to see Nathan as a father figure in order to undermine his relationship with her. A pause. He said, and I'm quoting, "You can't become her father just because she likes you." Nathan was quiet. "He wasn't talking to me," Claire said. "He was talking to Sandra, but he was looking at me when he said it, like I was supposed to feel something, like that was supposed to land. Did it? Not the way he wanted it to." A breath. Sandra asked him one question after that. She said, "Mr. Bennett, in the last 8 months, how many of your scheduled visitation weekends have you used the full time?" A pause. He had no clean answer. He said he'd been busy. He said work had been demanding. He said he'd been trying to give Molly space to adjust. Nathan closed his eyes briefly. "He said he was giving her space," he repeated. "He said he was giving her space," Claire confirmed, while filing to expand his custody arrangement. What did the mediator say? She said the petition for expanded custody was not supported by the demonstrated pattern of engagement and was being tabled pending a 3-month review of compliance with the existing arrangement. A pause. And she said that the presence of a stable, consistent adult figure in the child's life, who is not replacing either parent, but supplementing healthy parental relationships, is not grounds for modification. Nathan let out a breath. "Supplementing healthy parental relationships," he said. "That's what she said." Claire's voice shifted. "Nathan, you were named, not as a problem, as a demonstrated positive consistency." He sat with that for a moment. "Sandra's good," he said. "Sandra's extremely good." A pause, and then something underneath the professional summary gave way slightly. "I cried in the parking lot afterward. Just for a few minutes. Don't tell Molly." "I won't tell Molly. I'm okay. I'm good. I just..." A breath. "I was so afraid that fighting for us was going to cost Molly something. I was so afraid I was being selfish, that wanting this was going to hurt her." Claire. "I know. What Molly drew in that picture was real. Kids don't put people in their family drawings out of confusion. They put in who they trust." A silence. "She put you in," Claire said softly. "She put me in," he said. "And I intend to stay in." A pause that held more than either of them said. "Come for dinner Thursday," Claire said. "Real Thursday. No more pulled back. Just dinner." "I'll be there," he said. "And Nathan." "Yeah. Thank you for the waiting." "Don't thank me," he said. "Just make something that isn't pancakes." She laughed. Small and genuine and real. He drove home with his hand resting on the gear shift and the October approaching air coming through the cracked window, and he thought, "We're going to be okay." I was right. And then October arrived, and Grant made his worst move yet. It didn't come through attorneys. It didn't come through mediation. It came through Molly on a Friday evening when Claire picked her up from Grant's house after his weekend, and Molly was quiet in the back seat in a way that was different from ordinary quiet. Molly quiet usually had texture. She was thinking about something, or watching something, or composing an opinion she was about to deliver. This quiet was flat, absent. Claire noticed it immediately. She didn't push. She drove. She made dinner. She waited. After dinner, when Molly was supposed to be getting ready for her bath, and was instead sitting on the kitchen floor with Rusty in her lap, doing nothing in particular, Claire crouched beside her. "Hey," she said. "What's in your head?" Molly looked at her fox. "Daddy said Nathan isn't my real family," she said. The room went very still. "He said real family is blood," Molly continued in the flat tone of someone reciting something they'd been told. "He said Nathan's just pretending because he likes you. And when you stop liking each other, he'll leave, and then I'll be sad, and that's why I shouldn't call him family." Claire kept her face even. She was very good at this by now. "What did you say to Daddy?" she asked. Molly looked up. "I said Rusty isn't blood, and he's real family," she said. Claire pressed her lips together hard. "And what did Daddy say?" "He said that's not the same thing." Molly looked back at her fox. "He said I was too young to understand." "You're not too young to understand," Claire said quietly. "I know." Molly stroked Rusty's worn ear. "Is Nathan going to leave?" "No," Claire said, without hesitation, without qualification. "How do you know?" "Because he's still here, every time." Molly was quiet for a moment. "Daddy leaves," she said. Not accusatory, just a fact offered plainly the way children offer facts when they have processed them past the point of hurt and arrived at something harder and cleaner. "Sometimes yes," Claire said. "Nathan doesn't." "Nathan doesn't." Molly considered this with the thoroughness she brought to all significant evaluations. "Okay," she said, and stood up. "I'm going to have my bath now." Claire watched her walk down the hall. Then she sat on the kitchen floor in the space Molly had vacated, and breathed for a moment carefully, the way you breathe when something has hit a place you weren't defending. She called Nathan at 9 after Molly was asleep. She told him what Molly had said, every word. Nathan listened without interrupting. When she finished, there was a silence. Then Nathan said very quietly, "He said that to a 7-year-old. "She's 6, Claire said. "Almost 7. He sat down with his 6-year-old daughter and told her that the person she trusts most outside of her parents is pretending." "Yes." Another silence. When Nathan spoke again, his voice was careful in the way that meant something was happening underneath it that he was choosing not to perform. "Claire," he said, "I need you to hear something." "Okay. I'm angry right now. I want to be honest with you about that. I'm angry that he sat across from her and said that. I'm angry that she had to carry it home in the back seat by herself." A pause. "But I'm not going anywhere. The anger doesn't change that. It makes me more certain, not less." She was quiet. "Okay," she said. "Does Sandra need to know about this?" "I'll tell her Monday." "Good." "Nathan." "Yeah." She told him Rusty was real family even though Rusty isn't blood. A pause. "She's the smartest person I know," Nathan said. "She really is," Claire said, and her voice finally just slightly broke around the edges. "Hey," he said gently. "You're okay. She's okay. We're okay." "I know." A breath. "I know. Get some sleep." "Yeah." A pause. "Thursday." "Thursday," he said. "I'll bring the good sparkling water." "You and your sparkling water." "It's a consistent choice." "You're a consistent person." He let that sit. "Working on it," he said. "Nathan." Her voice was soft now, all the armor set down. "You're not working on it. You are it." He held the phone for a moment after she said that. Then, "Good night, Claire." "Good night." He set his phone down on his kitchen counter next to the Riverstone and stood there for a while in the quiet of his apartment. How was angry. He'd told her the truth about that. There was something about what Grant had done, the specific deliberateness of it. The choosing of a 6-year-old as the vehicle for a message intended for Claire and Nathan. The weaponization of a child's trust. that sat in Nathan's chest like a structural fault. The kind you couldn't see from the outside, but that changed the math of everything you were building. He thought about what he wanted to do about that anger. He ran through the options. He could confront Grant. He could ask Claire to confront Grant. He could fold it into Sandra's file and let it become evidence. He could write something down and never send it. He did none of those things. He washed his coffee cup. He checked the time. He went to bed. Because the answer to Grant Bennett had never been confrontation. The answer was the same as it had always been. Show up Thursday. Show up Saturday. Check the brakes. Learn the rock names. Shake the fox's hand. Stay for dinner. Answer the phone. Don't leave when it gets hard. The answer was continuation. And Nathan Cole was very, very good at building things that held. November arrived. 1 full year since a woman had sat across from him in a restaurant and asked him to pretend for 5 minutes. He didn't mark the date aloud. Neither did Claire. But on the Thursday evening closest to it, Molly looked up from her drawing at the kitchen table. She was always drawing now. Houses, mostly complicated houses with many rooms and carefully labeled inhabitants, and said without preamble, "We met you at the restaurant." Nathan looked up from the cabinet hinge he'd been trying to fix for 20 minutes. "We did," he said. "Mom was scared." "A little," Claire said from the stove, not turning around. "She held your hand," Molly said, "even though she didn't know you." "I remember," Nathan said. Molly looked at her drawing for a moment. "I knew you were going to be good," she said, "right at the beginning." Nathan looked at her. "How did you know?" he said. Molly thought about it seriously. "You shook Rusty's hand," she said. "Most grown-ups don't do that. They think it's silly." She looked at him. "But you did it serious, like it mattered." "It did matter," Nathan said. "I know," she said. "That's how I knew." She went back to her drawing. Nathan looked at Claire's back across the kitchen, the slight set of her shoulders, the way she had gone still at the stove for just a moment. He looked at Molly drawing her houses. I thought about what it cost to stay. The waiting. The stepping back. The legal letters. The conversation in a parking structure at 4 in the afternoon. The phone call about what a man had said to his 6-year-old daughter. He thought about the Riverstone in his pocket. He thought about foundations. Then Molly held up her drawing. 3 people in front of a house. "I gave it more rooms this time," she said, "because there are more of us." Nathan looked at the house on the page. It had 4 bedrooms. His name was above one of them. He didn't say anything for a moment. Then, "That's a good house," he said. "I know," Molly said. "I'm going to keep making it better." And that was the moment. Not the restaurant. Not the coffee shop, not the park, or the pancakes, or the mediation, or the phone calls in the dark. This was the moment Nathan understood with complete structural certainty that this was not temporary. This was not situational. This was not a kindness. He was extending to a woman and her daughter while he waited for his real life to resume. This was his life. This kitchen. This hinge that wouldn't cooperate. This woman at the stove who laughed at the wrong moments and made terrible pancakes and trusted him slowly and completely. This child who cataloged rocks by personality and shook her stuffed fox's hand at bedtime and drew houses with rooms for all of them. He picked up the screwdriver. He went back to the hinge. And he thought, "I have to tell her. I have to say it out loud. I have to stop letting the feeling live only in what I do and put it into words because she deserves to hear the words." He didn't say it that night, but he was going to. Soon. And whatever happened after whatever Claire said, whatever she needed, whatever it cost, he was going to be there for that too. That was the whole point. That had always been the whole point. He said it on a Thursday in December. Not planned. Not rehearsed. Not with candles or a restaurant reservation or any of the architecture that people typically build around moments they've decided are important. It happened because Molly had gone to bed 20 minutes earlier than usual. She'd had a long week, a substitute teacher situation that had reached some kind of institutional resolution. Nathan didn't fully understand, but that Molly had declared a victory, and Claire was standing at the kitchen counter with a glass of wine, and Nathan was sitting at the table with the remains of his coffee, and the kitchen was quiet in the specific way it got after Molly went to sleep, a quiet that had its own texture and weight. Claire was looking at something on her phone. Work email, probably. She had the expression she wore when she was reading something she was deciding how to feel about. Nathan looked at her. He looked at the kitchen. At the refrigerator with Molly's drawings held up by magnets shaped like Colorado state landmarks. At the chair where Rusty sat most evenings, because Molly had decided the fox needed a dedicated seat. At the cabinet hinge, he'd fixed 3 times now, and was beginning to suspect needed a full replacement rather than another repair. He looked at Claire again, and he said quietly into the ordinary silence, "I love you." Claire looked up from her phone. She looked at him the way she had looked at him that first night in the restaurant when he'd asked how long they'd been dating, with the expression of someone whose brain has received an input it wasn't expecting and is now running the recalculation. Nathan did not look away. He did not qualify the statement, or soften it, or follow it immediately with something that would give her an easier path around it. He just let it sit in the air between them. "Nathan," she said, "you don't have to say anything. I need a second. Take as many as you need." She set her phone down on the counter. She looked at her wine glass. She looked at the refrigerator. She looked at him. "I'm terrified," she said. "I know. Not of you. I want to be clear about that. Not of you specifically. I know what you're afraid of." "Do you?" "You're afraid that this works," he said. "You're afraid that it's real, and that it keeps being real, and then something happens that you couldn't predict, and it stops being real, and Molly loses someone else who mattered." Claire pressed her lips together hard. "Yes," she said. "I know," he said. "I'm afraid of that too." She looked at him. "You are." "Of course I am. I know what I mean to her, Claire. I know what it would cost her if I wasn't here." He kept his voice even. "But I can't let that fear be the reason I don't say a true thing. I love you. And I love Molly. And I'm not saying it to pressure you into anything. I'm saying it because it's been true for a long time, and you deserve to know that it's true." The kitchen was very quiet. Then Claire said very softly, "I love you too." He nodded once. "Okay," he said. "That's all you're going to say." "Okay. What do you want me to say?" "I don't know. Something more. Something bigger. Claire." He looked at her steadily. "I have been showing up at this kitchen table for 14 months. I have fixed the same cabinet hinge 4 times. I know that Molly won't eat the crust of her grilled cheese unless she's in a very specific mood. I know that you check your work email at 9 p.m., even when you promised yourself you wouldn't. I know that Rusty needs to face the door or she can't sleep." He paused. "This is already the something more. It's just not loud." She stared at him. Her eyes went bright. She didn't cry. She pressed the back of her hand to her mouth for a moment and breathed through her nose and then lowered her hand and said, "You are the most infuriating man I've been told. You say things like that. True things. Calm, accurate, devastating things. Is that bad?" "It's very bad," she said. "I had a whole speech prepared for why this had to stay exactly what it was." "When did you prepare it?" "About 7 months ago. That's a long time to hold a speech." "I'm very organized." He almost smiled. "What was the speech?" She shook her head. "It was about being responsible, about not letting Molly get more attached, about keeping appropriate—" She stopped. It was wrong. The whole thing was wrong from the first sentence. "Yeah," he said. "I knew it was wrong when I wrote it." "I know." She looked at him across the kitchen. "I don't know how to do this," she said. "I don't know how to let someone in and not be afraid every single day that I miscalculated." "You didn't miscalculate. You don't know that." "No," he said. "I don't. But I know that the alternative staying exactly where we've been forever, not saying true things, keeping everything at arm's length, because something might someday go wrong, that's not protecting Molly. That's modeling fear." Claire went still. "What?" she said. "She's watching," Nathan said. She watches everything. She watched Grant, and she watched you, and she watched me for a year before she handed me that river stone. She's not watching to see if we're happy. She's watching to see how we handle the things that are hard. She's learning what love looks like from the way we do it." He paused. "What do you want her to learn?" The silence that followed was the longest in 14 months of silences between them. Then Claire crossed the kitchen and sat down across from him at the table, close enough that their hands were almost touching. "I want her to learn that it's worth it," she said quietly, "even when it's terrifying." "Then let's show her that," he said. She reached across and covered his hand with hers. He turned his hand over and held hers back. "Okay," she said. "Okay," he said. Neither of them moved for a long time. The refrigerator hummed. Rusty sat in his chair facing the cabinet hinge that needed replacing held. It was the most important nothing that had ever happened in that kitchen. 3 weeks later, Grant filed again. Not custody this time. Something smaller and more targeted. He requested that the family court mediator conduct an in-home assessment of Molly's living situation, citing what his attorney described as continued concerns about the child's understanding of appropriate family boundaries. It was, Sandra told Claire on the phone, a harassment filing. It had a low probability of going anywhere meaningful. But it had to be responded to, documented, attended to. It was a cost. A deliberate, calculated cost. Claire called Nathan after she spoke with Sandra. Nathan listened to the whole thing without speaking. Then he said, "What do you need from me?" "Nothing," she said. "Sandra's handling it. I wanted to tell you." "Okay." "He's not going to stop," Claire said. "That's what I've realized. He's not going to run out of filings. He's going to keep finding ways to make this expensive and exhausting and destabilizing because that's what he does. That's the whole strategy." "I know. Nathan, I need to ask you something hard." He waited. "Is this worth it to you genuinely? Because I can see what it looks like from the outside. You came to fix a bicycle, and you got a custody battle, and an attorney, and a man who is going to find a new angle every 6 months until Molly turns 18. Her voice was steady and honest, in a way that had no performance in it. "That is not what you signed up for. And I need to know, not for me, but for Molly. I need to know if you're in this because you want to be, or because you're too good a person to leave." Nathan took a breath. "Claire," he said, "do you know what I do all day? You build bridges. I fight with bureaucracies about funding, and with city councils about timelines, and with contractors about specifications, and about 60% of my projects hit a point where every rational calculation suggests they should be abandoned because the cost-to-benefit ratio has shifted unfavorably." He paused. "And then I find the thing worth preserving, and I rebuild the case from there." "Nathan, the thing worth preserving is you and Molly. Grant is a bureaucracy problem. Sandra is my contractor. The timeline is uncertain. None of that changes the calculation." She was quiet. "You're not too good a person to leave," he said. "I'm a person who has decided. Those are different things." A long pause. "Okay," she said, barely a whisper. "Stop apologizing for his behavior," he said gently. "It's not yours." "I know. Do you?" A longer pause this time. "I'm working on it," she said. "Good, that's all." The in-home assessment happened in January. A quiet professional woman named Dr. Reyes spent 2 hours at Claire's townhouse on a Tuesday afternoon. She spoke with Claire. She spoke with Molly. She looked at the drawings on the refrigerator. She sat in the kitchen and asked questions about routines and school and friends and feelings. Nathan was not there. This was correct. This was Claire's space and Molly's assessment, and it was not his place to be present for it. But Molly apparently had things to say. Claire called Nathan that evening after Dr. Reyes had left, and Molly was in bed, and she was laughing in the way that surprised her, helpless and slightly overwhelmed. "What happened?" Nathan said. "Dr. Reyes asked Molly to describe the important people in her life," Claire said. "And Molly described you for approximately 11 minutes. 11 minutes. She talked about the bicycle. She talked about the rocks. She talked about the cardboard bridge you helped her build for the school project. She talked about how you know the difference between shield volcanoes and stratovolcanoes, which she considers a significant qualification. A breath. And then Dr. Reyes asked her how you make her feel, and Molly said I have this verbatim because Dr. Reyes wrote it down and showed me she said safe and not worried about tomorrow. Nathan was quiet. Safe and not worried about tomorrow, he said. That's what she said. He didn't say anything for a moment. Nathan. Yeah, I'm here. Are you okay? Yeah, he said. He stopped. Started again. I spent a long time not being someone's tomorrow. I spent a long time making sure I was only ever responsible for today, because today I could manage, and tomorrow was where things went wrong. A pause. She said I make her not worried about tomorrow. She did, Claire said softly. He stopped again. I know, Claire said. They stayed on the phone in silence for a moment, not speaking, just existing in the space of what Molly had said, which was both a 6-year-old's uncomplicated truth and the most precise description of love Nathan had ever heard. The assessment is going to be fine, Claire said finally. I know, Nathan said. Sandra says Grant is running out of angles. Good, Nathan. A pause. I want you to come to Molly's school presentation next week, the one about the rocks. She's been preparing for 3 weeks and she's going to be upset if... She stopped. I want you there, not because it looks good for Sandra, because she wants you there and I want you there. What time, he said. 2 o'clock, Thursday. I'll be there, he said. He was there. He sat 3 seats down from Claire in a row of folding chairs in a second-grade classroom, while 14 7-year-olds presented their rock collections to an audience of parents and guardians, and one civil engineer who had rearranged 2 meetings and driven across town in his lunch hour. Molly presented last. She had 9 rocks. She knew every name. She knew every geological origin. She had a theory about each one's personality, which she presented with the tone of someone delivering empirical findings rather than subjective interpretation. When she held up the small, smooth river stone identical to the one she'd given Nathan in the park, she'd apparently given the collection's version of it a similar significance. She said, "This one is dependable. It doesn't look special, but it always shows up." Nathan looked at his hands. The teacher, Ms. Parrish, said, "Very good, Molly. Where did you learn about this one?" Molly looked across the room and found Nathan in the folding chairs. "From Nathan," she said. "He showed me what dependable looks like." 14 parents turned to look at Nathan. He felt the weight of the moment with complete clarity. He didn't say anything. He just held Molly's gaze and gave her a single nod, the kind that said, "Yes, you got it exactly right." Molly nodded back with the satisfaction of someone whose work has been confirmed by the relevant expert. Ms. Parrish said it was wonderful. Claire, sitting 3 seats away, was looking at the floor with the particular attention of someone managing their face. Afterward, in the hallway, when the other families were collecting their children and their coats, Molly came out of the classroom with her rock collection box and found Nathan immediately in the small crowd. "Did you hear the dependable one?" she said. "I heard," he said. "I said it right. You said it exactly right." She looked satisfied. She looked at her box. Then she looked up at him with the directness she brought to all significant communications. "Are you going to marry Mom?" she said. The hallway was not quiet, but it felt in that moment like it was. Nathan crouched down to her level. "That's a conversation for me and your mom," he said. Molly considered this. "But you want to," she said. It was not a question. He looked at her for a long moment. "Yeah," he said. "I do." She nodded, filed it. "Okay," she said. "Just don't do it somewhere boring." She picked up her rock box. "I want to be there." "Noted," Nathan said. Claire appeared at his shoulder. She had heard approximately none of this conversation, and all of this conversation simultaneously, and her expression was doing several things at once. "Ready," she said. "Ready," Molly said. They walked out of the school together, the 3 of them, into the February cold, Molly in the middle, holding her rock collection, and Nathan thought, this is it. This is the foundation. Everything else is what gets built on top of it. 3 weeks later, Grant made his final move. It wasn't a legal filing. It wasn't an attorney letter. He called Nathan directly. Nathan was at his desk at 7:15 on a Wednesday morning when his phone rang from an unknown number, and he answered it on instinct, and Grant Bennett's voice came through the line. "Nathan Cole," Grant said. Nathan went still. "Grant," he said. "I thought we should talk," Grant said. "Man to man, without attorneys." His voice was smooth. The practiced, warm, reasonable voice. "I think there's been a misunderstanding about my intentions here." "I don't think there's been a misunderstanding," Nathan said. A pause. "You seem like a reasonable person," Grant said. "I can tell you care about Molly. I respect that. But what you may not understand is that children are adaptable. Whatever she's telling you, she feels right now, that changes. Situations change. And when you and Claire reach the end of whatever this is, she's going to be the one who deals with what comes after." A pause. "I've known Claire for 10 years. She cycles through things. You're a phase, Nathan. A kind, well-intentioned phase. But you need to consider what you're setting Molly up for." Nathan sat at his desk and breathed. He thought about every possible response to what he'd just heard. Then he said, "Grant, when is the last time you attended one of Molly's school events?" Silence. "I've been busy with..." "When?" Nathan said. A longer silence. "That's not relevant to..." "She presented her rock collection last Thursday," Nathan said. "She presented it to a room full of parents, and she was extraordinary. She knew every geological name, and she had a theory about each stone's personality, and she was confident and funny and completely herself." He paused. "You weren't there. I was." The silence on Grant's end had a different quality now. "I'm not trying to take your place," Nathan said. "I never was. But here's what I need you to understand. What you've been doing with Molly, the questions in the car, what you said to her about family, the filings designed to make Claire's life harder, that's not fathering. That's controlling. And the difference between those two things is something Molly already understands, even if you don't." A pause. "She's 7 years old, and she already knows the difference between someone who shows up and someone who talks about showing up. You should think hard about which one you're going to be." The line was completely quiet. Then Grant said, his voice stripped of the practiced warmth, "You don't know what you're talking about." "Maybe not," Nathan said. "But I know what she needs, and she told me herself." He ended the call. He set his phone on his desk. His hand was completely steady. He breathed for a moment. Then he picked up his phone and called Claire. She answered on the second ring, already in her car, heading to a client meeting. "Grant called me," Nathan said. A beat of silence. "He what?" "Directly. He called my cell. He told me I was a phase, and I should consider what I was setting Molly up for." Nathan kept his voice even. "I told him about the rock presentation. I told him the difference between showing up and talking about showing up." Another beat. "Nathan," she said. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine. Sandra should know he contacted me directly. That's potentially relevant to his pattern of behavior. I'll call her right now." A pause, and then under the professional response, something else. "Nathan?" "Yeah. Thank you. For handling it the way you handled it. How else would I handle it? A lot of men would have gotten angry." "I was angry," he said. "I just knew what to do with it." She was quiet for a moment. "I need to tell you something," she said. Her voice shifted, lower, more careful. "Tell me. I've been thinking about what you said, in the kitchen, about modeling fear for Molly." A pause. "I've been afraid for so long that I forgot what it felt like to just decide. To just say, this is the thing I want, and I'm going to stop running the risk calculation and just want it." Nathan waited. "I want this," she said. This. I'm done running the calculation." He was quiet for a moment. "Okay," he said. "That's it. Okay. What do you want me to say, Claire?" "Something more than okay." "You already knew," he said. "You've known for a while. You didn't need me to confirm it." A silence. I needed to say it out loud, she said. Then I'm glad you did. Nathan. Yeah. I love you, said plainly, steadily, without the tremor of someone saying it for the first time. Said the way you say something you've decided is true. I love you, he said back. The same way. A pause. I have a client meeting in 4 minutes, she said. Go. Thursday dinner. I'll be there. And Nathan. Yeah. Molly told me she already asked you about getting married and you said it was a conversation between you and me. He smiled at his desk. She reported that pretty fast. She reported it 30 seconds after you walked away. A small laugh. She also said, and I quote, he said yes, but in the indirect way that means yes. Nathan looked at his desk. At the structural analysis open on his screen. At the photograph of the pedestrian overpass he'd spent 18 months building printed and pinned to his board because it was the thing he was most proud of. Proud of this bridge, connecting two neighborhoods that had been separated for 4 decades. This thing that now people walked across every day without thinking about it, without knowing the math that held them up. She's right, he said. It does mean yes. The silence on Claire's end lasted 4 full seconds. Okay, she said, very quietly. Okay, he said. 4 minutes, she said. I have to go. Go, he said. She hung up. Nathan put his phone down and looked at the photograph of the bridge. He thought about what came next, the conversation he was going to have, the question he was going to ask, the specific location of that question, which he had been thinking about for weeks, and which was not going to be a restaurant or a rooftop or anywhere that required a reservation. It was going to be a kitchen with drawings on the refrigerator and a cabinet hinge that needed replacing, and a fox in a dedicated chair. The room where everything that mattered had actually happened. He picked up his pen. He went back to his specifications. He was building something. He always was. And this time, for the first time in a very long time, what he was building was going to last. But before that question could be asked, before anything could move forward into the bright open space that was beginning to feel possible, Molly did something that changed everything. Not in a bad way. In the way that children change things when they have decided something is true and see no reason to wait for adults to catch up. It happened on a Saturday morning in March. Not a planned Saturday. Not a Saturday with an agenda or a destination. Just a Saturday where Nathan had come over because the cabinet hinge finally needed the full replacement he'd been postponing, and Claire had texted him the hardware store measurements, and he'd come over with the right part and a cup of coffee. Molly was at the kitchen table drawing. Claire was answering emails in the living room. Nathan was on his knees in front of the cabinet with a screwdriver, which was the specific and unglamorous reality of what maintenance love looks like when you strip away all the performance. Molly watched him work for a while without speaking, which was unusual. Then she said, "Nathan." "Yeah," he said, not looking up. "Are you my dad?" He stopped. He sat back on his heels. He turned and looked at her. She was watching him with the focused, patient attention of someone who has thought about a question for a long time and is now ready to receive its answer without flinching. "You have a dad," he said carefully. "Grant is your dad." Molly looked at her drawing. "I know," she said. "But you're also something." She looked back at him. "I need to know what to call it." The kitchen was quiet. Nathan set down his screwdriver. He came and sat at the kitchen table across from her. He looked at this child who had handed him a river stone and drawn him into her family, and told a room full of people that he was dependable, and defended her stuffed fox as real family, with the confidence of someone who understood exactly what she was talking about. "You can call me whatever feels true to you," he said. "Whatever word feels like it fits what this is. You get to choose that." Molly considered this seriously. "What if the word is dad?" she said. He looked at her for a long moment. His throat was doing something he had to breathe through. "Then that word is yours to use," he said, "if you want to." She looked at him. She looked at her drawing. She picked up her crayon and wrote something above the figure on the right. She turned it around and showed him. One word. Dad. Nathan looked at the drawing. He didn't speak. Molly watched him not speak with the patience of someone who understands that some things take a minute to land. "Is that okay?" she said. He looked at her. He thought about everything that had led to this table. The restaurant, the coffee shop, the park, the phone calls, the legal letters, the mediation, the 11 minutes she'd spent describing him to a family court assessor, the rock presentation, the drawing with 4 bedrooms. All of it. Every single ordinary and extraordinary moment of it. "It's more than okay," he said. Molly nodded. Satisfied. Complete. She went back to her drawing. Nathan sat at the table and breathed and looked at the ceiling for a moment and did not cry, but it was a near thing, and he was not ashamed of how near. From the living room, Claire called, "Is the hinge done?" "Give me a minute," Nathan called back. He picked up his screwdriver. He went back to the cabinet. He fixed the hinge. He stayed. Claire found out about the drawing 3 minutes after it happened, not because Molly told her. Because Nathan walked into the living room with a cabinet hinge in one hand and a screwdriver in the other. And his eyes were doing something she had never seen them do before. Not wet exactly, but carrying something heavy and bright at the same time. And he said very quietly, "Molly wrote something on her drawing." Claire set her laptop aside. "What did she write?" she said. He held her gaze. "Dad," he said. The word landed in the living room like something physical. Claire pressed both hands flat against her knees. "She asked me what to call me," Nathan said. "I told her she could choose whatever word felt true. She chose that one." Claire stood up. She walked past him into the kitchen. Molly was still at the table working on the drawing, adding details to the house with the focused concentration of someone who has resolved the important question and is now free to attend to the decorative ones. Claire looked at the drawing, the 3 figures, the house, the word above Nathan's figure, Dad, simple crayon, 7-year-old handwriting. The most uncomplicated and devastating word in the English language placed there by a child who had decided what was true and had no reason to be indirect about it. Claire looked at her daughter for a long moment. "Molly," she said. Molly looked up. "Is that okay?" Claire asked. The same question Molly had asked Nathan. Molly tilted her head. "He said yes," she said. "In the direct way this time." Claire pressed her lips together. "Okay," she said. "You're not upset." "No, baby, I'm not upset." Molly looked at her mother's face with the thoroughness she brought to all important evaluations. "You're doing the thing where you're happy, but you don't want to make it weird," she said. "I'm doing that thing, yes." "It's okay to be happy," Molly said. "I'm happy." "I know you are." "Nathan's happy too." He was looking at the ceiling. "He does that when he's feeling a lot," Claire said. "I know," Molly said. "I figured that out a while ago." Claire looked at her daughter, this specific, perceptive, rock-collecting, fox-carrying person who had understood things about the 3 of them before either adult had fully articulated them, and felt something settle in her chest that had been waiting a long time to land. She went back into the living room. Nathan had set down the hinge and the screwdriver on the side table and was standing with his hands in his pockets, which was what he did when he was waiting to find out how something had landed. Claire stood in front of him. "You told her she could choose," she said. "Yes." "You didn't tell her what to choose." "No." "And she chose." "She chose." Claire looked at him. "You know what this means," she said. "I know what it means to me," he said carefully. "I know what it means to her. What it means for you is your call." She shook her head slightly. "Nathan Cole," she said. "I have been watching you show up at this house for 16 months. I have watched you fix the same cabinet hinge 4 times. I have watched you learn the names of 11 different rocks and pretend to shake a stuffed fox's hand every single time you leave. I have watched you sit in a folding chair in a 2nd-grade classroom and have a 7-year-old describe you to a room full of strangers as the most important non-parent person in her life." She stopped. "And I have watched you do all of that without ever once asking for a title or a guarantee or anything in return. He looked at her steadily. I wasn't doing it for a return, he said. I know, she said. That's the whole point. She reached up and put her hand against his jaw for a moment, a simple, steady gesture, and looked at him. The way you look at someone when you have stopped running the calculation and decided to just be in the room with them. She calls you Dad, Claire said. And I think that's exactly right. He covered her hand with his. Neither of them said anything. From the kitchen, Molly's voice arrived with perfect timing. Are you guys being weird again? Yes, Nathan called back. Okay, Molly said. Just checking. Claire laughed. He laughed. And the particular weight of the previous 10 minutes distributed itself through something lighter and more ordinary and more real. April arrived, and with it a stillness that none of them had expected. Sandra filed a formal response to Grant's direct contact with Nathan, documenting it as a pattern of coercive behavior. The family court mediator issued a review finding that the existing custody arrangement was appropriate and that no modification was warranted. Grant's attorney sent one more letter. Sandra responded to it in 2 paragraphs. After that, there was nothing. Not resolution. Not a grand conclusion. Just the particular quiet that settles when someone runs out of angles and can no longer manufacture the energy for new ones. Nathan noticed it first. Claire was slower to believe it. She kept checking her phone in the evenings, with the specific vigilance of someone waiting for the next filing, the next call, the next maneuver. He's quiet, Nathan said one Thursday evening in April. For now, Claire said. Maybe for longer. You don't know him. No, but I know that he's been fighting for control of something he was never going to win. Not because of me, because of you, and because of her. He looked toward the hallway where Molly had gone to bed. She told a family court assessor she feels safe and not worried about tomorrow. No attorney can argue past that. Claire set down her coffee cup. He missed her birthday, she said. Nathan went still. He called, Claire continued. He called that morning and said he'd come by in the afternoon and he never came. She waited by the window for an hour. Her voice was steady in the particular way that meant it was costing her. She didn't cry. She just after an hour she picked up Rusty and came and found me and said, "Can we have the cake now?" And we had the cake, and she didn't mention it again. Nathan said nothing for a moment. How was she? He said. Quiet, the flat kind of quiet. Claire looked at her hands. The kind I haven't seen since the early days. And then you came over for the evening part, and she spent 45 minutes telling you about the volcano documentary, and by the time she went to bed, she was herself again. Claire looked at him. You were the thing that made her okay again. Not me. You. You were already making her okay, Nathan said. I just added to it. Nathan, I mean it. You are the foundation she stands on. I'm just... He thought about it. I'm additional load capacity. Claire looked at him for a moment. Only you, she said. What? Only you would describe yourself in structural engineering terms. It's accurate. It's extremely you. He almost smiled. Is that a problem? No, she said. It's one of my favorite things about you. He looked at her. She looked at him. Something passed between them that was easy and certain and very warm. I was going to do this differently, he said. Do what differently? This conversation. I had a whole thing planned. She raised her eyebrows. Nathan, what are you talking about? He looked at her for another moment. Then he said, marry me. Claire went completely still. Not surprised, still. Something deeper than surprise. The still of someone who has arrived somewhere they were walking toward and is now standing in it. That's the whole thing, she said. That's the plan. I had a speech, he said. I practiced it. It was good. What happened to it? You said it was one of your favorite things that I describe myself in structural engineering terms, and I thought, I don't want to give you a speech. I want to ask you a real question. He looked at her. Marry me, Claire. Not because it fixes anything. Not because it's next on a list. Because I want to be in this kitchen for the next 40 years, fixing cabinet hinges and learning rock names and watching Molly become whoever she's going to be. Because I want to be your person in the specific, unglamorous real way. Because I love you and I love her and I'm not going anywhere, and I'd like that to be official. Claire pressed both hands to her mouth. Her eyes were very bright. You forgot to kneel, she said. He stared at her. Claire, I'm just saying, conventionally. Are you serious right now? I'm extremely serious. It's a whole tradition. He looked at her for one long moment. Then he got off the couch and knelt on the kitchen floor. He looked up at her. Marry me, he said again. She looked down at him. Then she laughed, a real one, surprised and full, the kind that arrived before she could organize her face around it. Yes, she said. Obviously yes. He stood up. She crossed the space between them and put her arms around him, and he held her there in the kitchen. The kitchen where all of it had happened. The dinners and the homework and the arguments and the cabinet hinge and the river stone on the counter and Rusty in his chair, and he thought, this is what I was building the whole time. I just didn't know what to call it. From the hallway, a small voice said, What's happening? They both turned. Molly was standing at the hallway entrance in her pajamas, with Rusty under her arm, her hair sideways from the pillow, squinting at them with the focused attention of someone who has been asleep and suspects she has missed something significant. Why are you hugging? She said. We're getting married, Claire said. Molly processed this. Did you kneel? She said, looking at Nathan. Yes, Nathan said. Good. She looked between them. Am I in it? In what? Claire said. The wedding. Am I in the wedding? Yes, Nathan said. You are absolutely in the wedding. Molly considered this with her head tilted. Can I be in charge of the rings? Molly. I'm responsible, she said. I've never lost a rock. That's actually a fair point, Nathan said. Nathan, Claire said. She's never lost a rock, he said. That's a documented fact. Molly looked satisfied. She hugged Rusty. She looked at Nathan with the direct, complete gaze that he had learned meant she was saying something she had thought about carefully. I knew you were going to be ours, she said. He crouched down to her level. How long have you known? He said. She thought about it. Since the restaurant, she said. When you shook Rusty's hand, serious. He looked at her. You could have told me sooner, he said. Would have saved some time. She shook her head. You had to figure it out yourself, she said. Grown-ups always have to figure things out themselves. It takes longer. She looked at him with the patience of someone who has accepted this as an immovable fact of the universe. But you got there. I got there, he agreed. She nodded once, decisive. Then she turned and walked back down the hall to her room. Molly, Claire called after her. What? We love you. A pause from the hallway. I know, Molly said. Good night. Her door closed. Claire looked at Nathan. Nathan looked at Claire. She's going to be in charge of the rings, Claire said. Absolutely, Nathan said. She's going to take it extremely seriously. I'm counting on it. Claire shook her head. But she was smiling. The full kind, no careful layer over it, just the thing itself. He reached over and took her hand. She held it back. They stood in the kitchen in the quiet that Molly left behind her, and it was the best quiet Nathan had ever been inside. The wedding was small. Late September the following year. A venue in Washington Park. The same park where Nathan had fixed the bicycle in November, almost 2 years earlier to the day. Not a grand space. A simple pavilion with good light and 40 chairs for the people who mattered most. Molly was in charge of the rings. She had been in charge of the rings since the kitchen conversation, and she had not once wavered in her sense of responsibility about this. She had a small velvet box. She carried it in her hands rather than on a pillow, because she explained pillows were unreliable. She walked down the aisle with the gravity of someone carrying something that cannot be replaced, and the posture of someone who is aware that this moment will be photographed. She delivered the rings at exactly the right moment. Then she stood beside Claire and held Rusty and watched the ceremony with the thoughtful assessing attention she brought to all things that mattered. When the officiant said Nathan and Claire were married, and Nathan kissed Claire, Molly said at a volume the front 3 rows could definitely hear, "Finally." There was laughter from the chairs. Nathan pulled back from Claire and looked at Molly. "Did you just say finally?" he said. "I've been waiting a long time," she said. "You're 7, he said. 7.5, she said. "And I've known since the restaurant." More laughter. Claire was laughing. Nathan was laughing. The officiant was trying to maintain ceremony while also laughing. Molly looked pleased with all of this. Grant was not there. Grant had known about the wedding because Molly had told him in the straightforward way she told him most things, and he had said he was glad Claire was happy and that he hoped Molly had a nice time, and Molly had reported this to Claire with the neutrality of someone delivering a weather forecast. He had his 2 weekends a month. He showed up more reliably now, not because of Nathan, not because of the legal process, but because Molly had started asking him directly why he hadn't come when he said he would, and Grant had found, as most people find, that it is much harder to disappoint someone who is looking directly at you and waiting for a real answer. I was not a changed man. He was not a villain who had been reformed. He was a man who had run out of room to maneuver and had settled grudgingly into a version of presence that was better than his absence. Molly accepted this with the clear-eyed practicality of someone who has decided to take what is actually available rather than wait for what should be there. She had enough. She had more than enough. She had Nathan. The months after the wedding moved, the way the months before it had moved quickly and full of the specific texture of ordinary life that Nathan had once thought he was content to live without. He moved into the townhouse in October. The apartment was emptied over a weekend. He was surprised at the end of the second day to find that what had taken him 8 years to accumulate fit neatly into a life that had been waiting for it. The last object he carried out of the apartment was Molly's first family drawing, the one she had made in 2nd grade. 3 figures and a blue house with a crooked chimney. Mommy. Me. Nate. He'd had it on his refrigerator for a 1.5 years. He brought it to the townhouse, and Molly saw him carrying it in and immediately went serious. "You kept it," she said. "Of course I kept it," he said. She looked at the drawing for a moment. "It's better now," she said. "The new ones. All of them." She thought about it. "But also the house is better. I draw it better now." "You draw everything better." "I know," she said. "I practice." She took the drawing from him and went and added it to the collection on the refrigerator, arranging it carefully among the newer ones. The 4-bedroom house, the one with Dad above Nathan's figure, a recent one that included Rusty as a 4th figure with his own label, the Fox. She stood back and looked at the full collection. "It's a good wall," she said. "It is," Nathan said. "You're in all of them," she said. "The later ones." "The ones that matter," she said, and went to find her rocks. Nathan stood at the refrigerator and looked at the drawings. All of them. The progression of them. A child's record of who she understood her family to be updated over 18 months as her understanding grew and settled into something certain. He was in all the ones that mattered. He stayed at the refrigerator for a moment longer than necessary. Then he went to find the cabinet hinge. There was a new one in the kitchen of the townhouse that had been loose for 3 weeks, and he fixed it. 6 months after the wedding, on an ordinary Saturday morning in April, the 3 of them were in the kitchen in the way they were most mornings now. Claire was making pancakes. She had gotten significantly better at pancakes over the course of the past year. Though she would not fully acknowledge this improvement, and Nathan had learned not to mention it directly. Molly was at the kitchen counter, working on a drawing. Rusty, now so worn that one ear was being held on by a careful repair, Nathan had made with a needle and thread on a Sunday afternoon, sat beside her. Nathan was trying to replace a towel bar that had pulled away from the wall behind the bathroom door. He was in the hallway adjacent to the kitchen, which meant he could hear everything that was happening in both rooms, which was more or less the precise geography of his life now. He heard Claire say to herself, or to the kitchen, "I can't believe it's been almost 2 years." He called from the hallway, "Since the restaurant." "Since the restaurant," she confirmed. You hijacked my dinner, he said. You let me. I was raised politely. You held my hand, she said. A complete stranger's hand. I was trying to help. You were already gone, she said. I could tell. He came to the kitchen doorway with the towel bar in his hand. Excuse me. She looked at him over her shoulder with the particular expression that meant she was about to enjoy herself. You shook the fox's hand, she said. Nobody does that unless they've already decided. He looked at Rusty on the counter. He looked at Molly, who was listening to this conversation with the attention of someone who has heard a story she likes and is happy to hear it again. I was being polite, Nathan said. You were being you, Claire said. Which is the same thing, but also more than that. He looked at her for a moment. She turned back to the pancakes. He went back to the towel bar. Molly said without looking up from her drawing, Dad. He stopped. Even now, 6 months in the word, still landed with a specific weight every single time. The kind of weight that was not heavy in a bad way. The kind that was solid. The kind that reminded you where the ground was. Yeah, he said. You're doing it wrong, she said. The towel bar. The pancakes. Mom's burning them again. I'm not burning them, Claire said. Molly looked at her drawing. The smoke smell is the third sign. There's no smoke. There was smoke. Molly. Nathan was already in the kitchen. He stepped past Claire and moved the pan. He checked the underside of the top pancake. Saved. Just barely, but saved. Claire looked at it. That was not burned, she said. It was close, Nathan said. It was approaching done. It was approaching done very aggressively. Molly made a small sound that was not quite a laugh, but contained one. Claire pointed her spatula at Nathan. You, she said, are not allowed to have opinions about my pancakes. I have documented the improvement over 18 months. You have not. I have a mental spreadsheet. Nathan. The February pancakes were a turning point. I will pour this batter on your head. The pan's still hot, he said. That would be inadvisable. Molly looked up from her drawing with full open delight. This was it. This was the thing. Not the proposal, not the wedding, not the legal victory, not any of the moments that had felt like turning points while they were happening. It was this. A Saturday morning and a near-burned pancake and a 7-year-old watching her parents argue about a spatula with the specific joy of someone who lives inside a thing that is working. Nathan caught Molly's eye. She grinned at him. He gave her a small nod. She went back to her drawing. Claire moved him aside with her elbow and reclaimed the pan and said he was insufferable, and he agreed that he was, and she made the rest of the pancakes without incident, and they were in fact very good. They ate breakfast at the kitchen table, the three of them, and Rusty in his chair. Molly finished her drawing while she ate, which Claire nominally disapproved of and had never successfully stopped. She held it up when she was done. A house. A good one, better than the early one's real proportions. Now a porch windows that were actually even. 3 people in front of it. Above the first figure, Mom. Above the second, M.E. Above the third, Dad. Below all of them, in the careful handwriting of a 7-and-a-half-year-old who had recently decided that her penmanship needed to reflect her seriousness as a person, our family. Nathan looked at the drawing. Claire looked at the drawing. Molly set it on the table between them. I'm going to make a better one someday, she said. When I can draw hands. Hands are hard, Nathan said. I know, I've been practicing. She drank her juice. But this one is true even if the hands are wrong. Nathan looked at our family in a 7-year-old's handwriting. I thought about a November night, 14 months before a marriage, and 26 months before this breakfast, when a woman had sat across from him in a restaurant and asked him to pretend. He thought about how he had agreed, and how he had taken her hand, and how a small girl with a lopsided fox had watched him shake that fox's paw and decided right then what kind of person he was. She had been right. He just needed the time to become it fully. He looked at Claire. She was looking at the drawing with the expression she no longer tried to manage open, full, everything visible. She looked up and found his eyes. He reached across the table and took her hand. She held it back. Molly looked at their hands, looked at her drawing, looked at Rusty. "Okay," she said to no one in particular, and all three of them at once. "Okay." That was the whole of it. That was the complete and sufficient word for everything that the three of them had built in the space between a stranger's restaurant table and a Saturday morning with near-burned pancakes and a drawing that said, "Our family. Not rescued, not fixed, not finished. Just here. Together. Real." Nathan Cole had spent years building things designed to hold weight over long distances, and he understood better than most that the measure of any structure is not the moment of its construction, but the ordinary days it carries without failing, the weight of regular life, trusted to it, morning after morning, without drama or ceremony or anyone watching. This was the structure that held. This kitchen. This family. This choice made first in a moment of unexpected grace, and then again every single day, since in every ordinary, unglamorous, real way that love expresses itself when it has stopped performing and simply decided to stay. It had begun with a woman who needed someone to pretend. It had become something neither of them had known to ask for, and the little girl who had seen it first, who had known it before, either adult had the courage to say it out loud, sat at the kitchen table with her worn fox and her family drawing, and ate her pancakes in the comfortable, unshakable certainty of someone who has never once doubted that the people she loves are going to be there tomorrow. She was right, they were.